Hello and welcome to a special edition of Channel 51 News, resurrected from the dead, as so much to talk about, as you can see on the bottom of the screen. Now, Josh and I convene twice a week when we can. Occasionally we get distracted with life getting in the way, but I thought I would just bring an update of all the great news that's happening around the world and to offer my perspective on it. All of us come to what we're reading now with our own biases, of course. And what does that actually mean? Do we believe lies, or is the truth finally being revealed? Well, I'm in this race purely to get the information accurately, but also to determine what happens when the old world collapses. And it's very hard for anyone who's watching this show to think that it's not collapsing before our very eyes, but in a way that folds into something better, not worse. Now, we've all been through the threats of compulsory medicine, digital ID, artificial intelligence, etc. But we're also human and we're also intelligent, which means that we are capable of adapting to anything, but also if the conditions move in our favour. But in order to move into the new world, we've got to be able to see what was bad about the old, and that's exactly what's happening right now. I find it incredibly exciting because all of my favourite subjects, good or bad, are all appearing at the same time. And I thought it was too good an opportunity to waste and not to bring you something ahead of the weekend. So please, if you agree, don't agree, hate or like, just let me know what you think below in the Substack, the Facebook, the Spotify if you're listening over there now, or even on X. It'd be great if you could share it as well if there is something that resonates with you. So there's quite a few subjects to get on to today, and obviously the first one we're going to talk about is Prince Andrew, and let's get on to that right now. I'm going to play for you a clip from Fox News that is suggesting that Andrew could be facing life in prison. Take a look.
Facing charges of sharing classified information with his good buddy, convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. These are some looks at him as he was in a car there. These stills from video new into the newsroom right now. Let's go ahead and bring in senior correspondent Eric Shawn. He has new breaking details for us. He is in New York City today. Hey, Eric.
He looks pretty alarmed in that photo, Jillian. As you can see, pretty shocked. He was put under arrest this morning. He has now left the police station, we're told. And if he's convicted in this case, he could go to prison for life. The younger brother of King Charles taken into custody early this morning at his home by police after his emails to Jeffrey Epstein allegedly revealed him sharing official secrets, including inside information about government business. That includes spilling details about his official trips, as well as confidential briefings that he had while he served as Britain's trade envoy in 2010 and 2011. But despite the arrest and the allegations, Andrew's brother, King Charles, has been keeping up with a public schedule today. The king attended a London fashion event with celebrities, and in a statement, he has said that he supports the investigation of his brother. Quote, "I have learned with the deepest concern the news about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and suspicion of misconduct in public office. What now follows is the full, fair, and proper process."
How about that? It's quite incredible, isn't it? And if you are considering insider information, in any other part of the world, they call that insider trading. But to give that information to Jeffrey Epstein, that is something else, isn't it? So let's now look at something else here. Now, I haven't brought the pictures up because I've shared them many times before, but the King himself was best friends with Jimmy Savile. Now, it was Her Majesty's Secret Service. In other words, it's impossible for the royals not to know what Jimmy Savile was actually up to. Nobody can get away with what Savile did at the higher end of town and not know. So that means that the king himself, well, maybe he might one day have a case to answer, albeit President Trump, who did come out and say that he felt sorry for what had happened, did say that the king who was heading to America was a good man. Well, Trump is known to play both sides of the fence. Here's an old pic that Liz Crokin shared. That time in 2015, a naked man was seen escaping out of a bedroom window of Buckingham Palace, and they tried to convince us it was a hoax publicity stunt for a TV show, as if the Queen would approve a hoax involving a fully naked man fleeing the royal palace for a dumb TV show. They think we're stupid. Well, about a year and a half ago, give or take, I interviewed former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth, Gavin Ashenden. And the subject moved in the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes of the interview about what my thoughts were for the House of Windsor back then. This is what Gavin Ashenden had to say.
Can the royal family survive without the ideas that made monarchy what it is? And if you'll forgive me going back to it, the monarchy is a Catholic Christian idea. It's already set itself at a distance from its original conception by becoming increasingly Protestant. Well, the Protestants in this country borrowed all the Catholic clothes and buildings, and so they can keep the show going for a while. But to the extent that the royal family aren't even Christian, to that extent you hollow it out, and there'll come a point when it collapses. When will that happen? Probably sometime during William's life, I would think. I don't say that to be fatalistic. It's just that you've got to decide what the monarchy is and what the ideas are. And essentially, as we saw at the coronation, from the symbolism, they're profoundly Christian. You can't have a Christian idea and then practice it with values that are wholly unchristian. And the more woke the monarchy goes, the more it detaches itself from its umbilical cord and from its own raison d'etre.
Extraordinary interview given by Gavin Ashenden. It went for an hour. I have shared it on channel51.com.au if you'd like to see the whole interview. It is as good as that for the entire hour. But there he is. He's predicting that the House of Windsor will collapse in William's lifetime. It could well be before that. Now, I want to show you a little bit from Les Wexner's testimony before Jasmine Crockett. This is Les Wexner of Victoria's Secret fame, the one who sold a townhouse, the one that Epstein owned in New York, for $1 and became his one client. One client? Well, now we're learning that Benny Johnson's posted this from Les Wexner's testimony. Les Wexner says that Jeffrey Epstein claimed he was the financial advisor to Eli de Rothschild and the Rothschild family in France. Well, specifically, I talked to Eli de Rothschild, so he represented their whole family. Or did he? Because records indicate that Wexner was his only client, and whether or not Wexner is connected to spy agencies themselves, and that's where the money came from in order to fund Epstein, who is now perceived to be known to be a spy for multiple countries, CIA, Mossad, possibly MI6 as well. And of course, there was all the allegations thrown at Russia recently as well, because he made that inquiry on behalf of somebody else. So clearly known in those spy circles. So the water is muddied. But the little clip that I want to show you now is just 12 seconds where Wexner's giving an answer and he's interrupted by his lawyer, who says to him, if you don't reduce your answers to 5 words, I will effing kill you. Take a look.
It was just regularly done.
Answer the question. 5 words, okay? Answer the question.
Okay.
So that was caught on a hot mic. I'll effing kill you if you answer a question in more than 5 words. How about that? Well, Wexner went on to say that he never saw anyone at the island. He only ever visited the island with his wife, Abigail, that he only ever knew Trump as an acquaintance. Trump introduced himself to Wexner, not the other way around. He said he wouldn't know him. He wouldn't expect that Trump would recognise him in a room, etc., and that there was no connection with Trump and any abuse of any females, children, or anything like that. Horrific, none at all. So that testimony didn't go very well, as you would expect that it wouldn't, because there is no evidence. Now, just as a quick aside, there is all the usual hand-wringing Democrats out there screaming from the top of their lungs, Katie Johnson, all the time. This is going to come back and bite Trump. That Katie Johnson story has been not only debunked, but she has also admitted that she made it up, and mainstream news has also admitted that they realised that the story was made up. And digging deeper, there was a particular character involved in getting that together who used a false name himself in order to bring up these types of people to make allegations against significant public figures, one of whom was Trump. Trump. That case started before 2016 and went away after Trump was elected. So if you see anyone saying that Katie Johnson and the 13-year-old girl and Trump, it's an absolute nonsense, and you can find media out there, particularly the Daily Mail, that has completely debunked it, and there are very clear headlines. I'm not bringing it up in today's show, but if somebody needs it, let me know in the comments, and we'll dig that up for you, but you can find it online anywhere. All right, what I want to do now is change tack, and I want to show you something here. I think it's quite important. This is in relation to the Board of Peace. This clip is well worth taking a look at.
The United Nations Security Council approved the establishment of the Board of Peace chaired by President Donald Trump, a governing body dedicated to providing security, infrastructure, and homes for Gaza's people, ushering in the new dawn for Gaza. The new Palestinian Technocratic Government of Gaza, the NCAG, was elected with consent of all parties, including the Palestinian factions, Israel, and the Arab countries. Rafah border crossing with Egypt was open. The NCAG will secure the disarmament of Gaza to ensure one authority, one law, and one weapon. The United States and its partners, in coordination with the World Bank, are pledging billions of dollars to rebuild Gaza. Safe areas are being established in Rafah and later across the Gaza Strip, where families can receive shelter, food, health care, and education. In Rafah, Gazans will build their first new city. The NCAG, with the Board of Peace, will expand development across the entire Strip, employing hundreds of thousands in reconstruction and business activity. Transportation, water, and energy systems will be restored, and a modern economy will begin to emerge. Children will return to classrooms with a curriculum that promotes tolerance, dignity, and peace. Our goal by year 3, Rafah fully rebuilt, unemployment curbed, and Gaza connected to the world through an Abrahamic gateway, linking it with Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and extending to India and Europe. By year 10, Gaza will be self-governed, integrated into the region with thriving industries and housing for all. This is the framework for Gaza's rebirth: secure, prosperous, and peaceful.
It's amazing.
It is quite some plan, and certainly a vast difference from what we've seen in the past. And there will be those that bring their biases to the table and say this bad, that bad, the other bad. The fact is you've got to deal with what you're dealing with, and what was attempted to be done there was to eradicate terrorism once and for all. And we're going to touch on Iran in a minute, which is going to be the hub of all said terrorism, and the idea of being able to iron those kinks out as well and deliver a new regime on behalf of the people, or for the people, which was the preferred idea. But before we get there, I just want to show you a couple of quick graphics. This one here are all of the nation states that are participating in the Board of Peace. The top section there are those that have agreed and were there. Then there are the next 6 states below: Albania, Belarus, Cambodia, Egypt, Kuwait, and Vietnam, who have expressed an intent to accept their invitations. And then there are the observers that you can see there. There's a bunch of other countries there that are going along to observe that have yet to accept or decline. Now, here are the second set of countries. These are invitees that have not yet responded, including Australia in that first section there, and Russia and India. Then there is Canada, who has rescinded, and then there are those countries that have declined: Austria, New Zealand, Norway, UK, Germany, Vatican City, etc. So it's very clear that the Five Eyes nations don't want any part of Trump. And why would that be? Because they are part of the globalist system that is going on, which is very, very interesting. Now, as another aside, I was watching a video that InfoWars, Alex Jones had made with Larry Nichols back in 2015. He of Clinton fame, who was an insider who became a bit of an enemy, died in 2020. But he made the claim that in 2015 he was fighting desperately to get rid of Hillary as president, even though Wikipedia is trying to say that he'd walked that back and said he would support Hillary. Well, his claim was this, that if Hillary was to become president, within 6 or 9 months, Bill Clinton was going to be the UN ambassador to the United Nations, and then within 6 to 9 months of that, he was going to be made Secretary General of the United Nations. How about that? That would give that couple the most power in history of any political body, to be the US President and the Secretary of the UN. Well, now you can see why the Board of Peace exists, is to dismantle the threat of that ever happening again, and clearly shows that the Clintons and the Trumps are not on the same team. Why would you go and create the Board of Peace if that were the case and not just use the UN the way that you're expected to do? All right, let's talk about Iran here. Donald Trump was asked today his thoughts about what's happening. Let's take a look.
Qatar, countries like nobody could have signed. You would have had that threat. Nobody could have had. You couldn't have had peace in the Middle East. So now we may have to take it a step further, or we may not. Maybe we're going to make a deal. You're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days. But this meeting today is proof with determined leadership, nothing is impossible.
So it looks like that Trump has given Iran 10 days to make a deal. In the meantime, in order to make a deal, this is what's happening around Iran at the moment. And you can see a whole bunch of battleships there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all in the region, letting Iran know. Now, Iran has since responded and has complained to the United Nations about intimidation. So there's a nation state that knows that its days are numbered, and it also knows it's going to be held to account at some stage. And Iran is the tipping point, and all the usual naysayers, the Candace Owens and the Nick Fuentes, are out there saying that Trump's going to start World War III. Well, if they were, where's Russia and China with their battleships at this stage? Not quite happening. There seems to be a little bit more nuance here behind the scenes. All right, let's now go to Australian news, and the big news overnight is this poll. This is ahead of the Victorian state election and voting intention. One Nation, can you believe that? They're up 26 points to 26.5%, so they had no presence a little while ago. The Labor Party has been decimated, 37 down to 25.5. The Libs are down from 34 to 21. The Greens up to at 13 and the others at 13. That means it's anyone's race, and experts are predicting a hung parliament at least. Could you imagine if there was a hung parliament and Labor still scraped in? It just doesn't seem possible. But One Nation at 26, the Libs at 21, that gets you to 47. And then it's the other parties as well there. So it's going to be very tight. But can One Nation with 26% support do enough to get preferences in order to win seats? Because it would seem that Labor and Liberal, the establishment, will probably want to preference each other in order to prevent it. And that would be to the detriment of the Liberals, who couldn't be any more stupid if they tried, if they wanted to try and do that. But of course, that's what is planned to happen out there in Farrer in the by-election of Susan Lee, where they're talking about preferencing each other to stop One Nation getting up, which is an absolute disgrace either way. Now, just very quickly on this whole One Nation situation, why aren't all the minor parties just joining One Nation at this point? Like, why aren't they just going, you know what? We're just going to join, we'll become One Nation, but we'll have a presence and we'll join your rank and file. Wouldn't that be the obvious way? And then it soaks up all the third parties. So then it comes down to a four-party race, more or less. Labor, the Coalition, the Greens, and One Nation. And it's just down to four. And then if you divide it again, you've got Coalition and One Nation versus Labor and the Greens. Well, isn't that what it's all about? It's always a 51-49 race, but why do we need 35 parties in order to do it? So we have a real problem. And that problem has been magnified by Gerard Rennick saying publicly that he wouldn't join One Nation, and there were reasons for it, due to personnel, due to clashes, due to suspicions of malfeasance and other things, and he becomes idealistic in that approach. So do you punish Gerard for doing it, or do you say, come on, mate, we know it's a blood sport, just get in there? Well, that's a decision for Gerard to make, and a decision for his party folk to do the same. Now, the party folk will do what their president and what their leader says, and they will play that line. But there is another avenue here, which I've talked about ad nauseum, which is the idea of merging. So the two best parties to merge in this case, to create another pathway towards the eventual merge, and the timing of Pauline Hanson. So Pauline Hanson's career can't last forever. This woman's in her 70s, although she could effectively stay as a politician for another decade, why not? But she can't do it forever. And if she's Prime Minister, does she have the solutions, or is she going to be annihilated by what would be a new alliance between Greens and Labor and the Liberals, all of whom are going to pick her apart? to test that, Malcolm Roberts this week was kind of embarrassed in the mainstream media about his sort of response to the climate change scenario when he was being interviewed or talking to Dr. Karl. Now, it doesn't mean that what he says was right or wrong. It's the perception of if he was right or wrong. And it's the same perception that Donald Trump has been ridiculed for his entire, 9-10 years since he took office as president until today, even though he's getting everything right. But we've still got to go through the suffering of it. So does Pauline and Malcolm Roberts have the brain power of Donald Trump to be able to do it? So what you're going to need is to surround yourself with better people. And that's when we get back to the merging. My first merge in my fantasy politics, which I don't think is such a fantasy, is that the Hart Party merges with the People First Party. The Hart Party takes over the health and wellbeing and brings in Michael O'Neill and his team, including Barbara O'Neill. And Jared concentrates on the banking side, the finance side, the economic solutions side. And you build your own kind of coalition. And what that's going to do is it's going to attract other minor parties to go, you know what, we should either be a part of this or we should start merging ourselves with who we think we align with. And then it starts to make sense because there is momentum and a willingness to work together. So hopefully that'll be the case. Meantime, Labor, as you saw, their popularity is plummeting everywhere, 95 seats federally. Well, it won't be that in the next election. That is for certain. And of course, what you just saw there in the state, Jacinda Ardern doing no favours there and also shutting down conferences where she's being questioned. Well, federally, the ISIS bride scandal's a beauty because now we're told by John Adams that Senator Penny Wong and Tony Burke have been referred to the National Anti-Corruption Commission regarding the ISIS bride scandal. Last night, Sky News aired allegations that legal obligations and procedures were not followed in the issuing of Australian passports to women and children linked to Islamic State. The Albanese government is taking deliberate steps to increase the risk of terrorism in Australia, putting the lives of all Australians at risk. That is massive. So a lot of stuff happening here in Australia. And isn't it interesting, all the moving parts that happen outside of what you are focusing on at the moment? Doesn't mean what you do, you don't stop. It just means that things are actually happening. And you kind of got to put a little bit of faith in something to do with whatever you believe in. If you're a faith-based person, that things are going to be okay at the end of the day. Doesn't mean we stop doing it. On the contrary, we just know that we're doing better than we otherwise thought we may have been doing. All right, I want to move now down to, this is my favourite story and always has been, and really because it's about the bigger picture. Now, many people will say that aliens are nonsense, that it's a setup, that you're going to have Project Bluebeam and all these other things. But the reality is that this universe that we live in is absolutely impossibly vast, and it's impossible that there isn't other life out there somewhere. It's just how far away or indeed how close could they even be under our feet. Doing a little bit of research earlier on Anunnaki, and it's considered to be Sumerian race, etc. And some say mythological, some say real, some say giants, and then you've got the Book of Enoch and all these other great things that weave mythology and to missing parts of the Bible. Now, why are missing parts of the Bible so interesting when we talk about the Book of Enoch and the Ethiopian Bible? Because the Ethiopian Bible is what Mel Gibson is relying on to tell the story of the resurrection of Christ in 2 parts coming out next year. It's self-incredible what's going on. But how does religion survive if, for example, we were told that aliens exist? So let me play you this clip, firstly from Trump today, asked about it. What do you think he actually gave away here or didn't give away? We'll come back in a moment.
Something that got a lot of attention this week. Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. You know?
So aliens are real?
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. He made a big mistake. He took it out of classified information. No, I don't have an opinion on it. I never talk about it. A lot of people do. A lot of people believe it. Do you believe it, Peter?
The president can declassify anything that he wants to,
Well,
so if you
maybe I'll
want to
get him
make
out
an
of trouble.
announcement.
I may get him out of trouble by declassifying.
We know illegal aliens are real.
Yeah, illegal. Only illegals. What else?
Based on what you've been told, what do you think happened to...
Such an interesting story. So he just said he gave away classified information. Carmine Sabia posted this. President Trump just basically confirmed the existence of extraterrestrials when asked about what President Obama said about them being real. He just gave away classified information. What do you think? Well, there was a rumour posting out on Telegram about a week ago saying that Trump was planning to give a extraterrestrial disclosure speech on July 8 at the end of the FIFA World Cup being held in the US. Here is Lara Trump talking to Miranda Devine about the same subject.
Do you think that he's about to make an announcement about UFOs? Because President Obama was just on a podcast talking about how he believes in UFOs and hinting that he saw something when he was president.
Well, I said this in my podcast too. What's funny is we've kind of asked my father-in-law about this because we're like, well, what do you know? Because Miranda, we all want to know about the UFOs, or we all want to know what's going on. And he played a little coy with us. And so that, of course, led us to believe, Eric and I were like, oh my gosh, if he won't even like fully tell us, maybe there's more to it. And then I have just heard kind of around that, I think he's actually said, I think my father-in-law's actually said it, that there is some speech that he has that I guess at the right time, and I don't know when the right time is, he's going to break out and talk about, and it has to do with maybe some sort of extraterrestrial life, so to speak.
It'll be the greatest moment in human history, and the naysayers will work out a way to poo-poo it. But just to imagine that there is other intelligent life out there in the universe opens up a galactic community, brand new knowledge, and all of a sudden the human condition, the human species can spread out there with new knowledge if that were to be the case. It could also go the other way completely. What if we go complete biblical and we talk about the descendants of Cain and the descendants of Noah? Meaning us, regular Joes, are the descendants of Noah, and there are those that might believe that they're the descendants of Cain. If that were the case, and there was to be some presence hidden on Earth, perhaps Antarctica, perhaps Greenland, who's down there? Who's pulling the strings? And why did John Kerry travel to Antarctica 3 days after President Trump won the election in November of 2016? Was he going down there to talk to his bosses or somebody else and to say that your cover has been blown, but don't worry, we've got a plan to patch it up? Who knows? These are far bigger questions than we can cover on today's show, but it certainly means that we are living in a time that is unlike any other in history. The royal family, the first time we've ever seen, being arrested and potentially could face life in prison. At the same time, we're seeing the rebuilding of Gaza into a 21st, second century megalopolis, if you will, and a newly governed country away from terrorism. We're seeing the hosts of terrorism, Iran, directly on the ropes, given 10-day warning. We've seen a board of peace convene with almost 40 nations involved. We've seen one nation boost in the polls seemingly out of nowhere, encouraging all of those on the other side of the fence to work together for their own benefit at long last, with an actual prize there. And Pauline Hanson seemingly holding all the power, but with not necessarily all of the ability to be able to do so. It's more than a popularity contest, so you need to be able to prepare for that, and there are many, many people that could be able to get involved one way or another, whether they join and fight from within or join outside and come in and try and take over, but that's the way politics is played. And then, of course, the biggest story of all time, that we are not alone, is now mainstream news with 2 US presidents, can you believe that, talking about aliens in the same week. We're not going backwards at all. We are going forwards at a rate of knots. It's incredible. That's what I wanted to bring for you today ahead of the weekend. Have a great weekend. I'll regroup with Josh for our Monday show, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of more news by then. But in the meantime, thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate any likes, comments, shares. It really helps change the algorithm, and let your friends know that you saw it on channel51.com.au. See you next time. Thank you.